Welcome back to the Slasher Siblings podcast. I'm your co-host Cicely,
And your host, Hayden.
and today we have a special guest. Drum roll. Xavier!
Yo, that's me. Hello.
What's up?
Nothing. How are you guys doing today?
Great, how are you?
Good.
Our question from last week was, Christian Bale played Patrick Bateman, the homicidal main character in the 2000 film American Psycho, based on which book by which American author?
That sounded really hard for you.
Yeah, it was the top one.
Oh, Bret Easton Ellis.
Woo, whoever got that and didn't Google it,
Nice!
Congratulations.
good job. If you Googled it,
You suck.
get on out of here.
Yeah.
Anyway, we have X here today, my nephew, not from Sicily.
Oh. Nope. Definitely not.
So this young guy here
This
picked-
young fella.
picked this movie because he said he hadn't seen it. That was a long time ago, like
almost
over
like a year.
over a year ago. We watched it, and he said he really liked it and wanted to do it on the podcast. So here he is today,
Here we are.
Howdy.
and now he's gonna tell you what movie it is today.
Yeah. Today we are going to be speaking about Hereditary. It was made in 2018. It's rated R, 2 hours and 7 minutes long, and got a 7.3 out of 10 on IMDb. And for those of you wondering what it's about a grieving family who's haunted by tragic and disturbing occurrences.
Right. So I really like this movie. It's it's an A24 movie. I'm a huge fan of A24, as we discussed whenever we talked to Evan, whenever we did The Witch and Midsummer, which is actually probably my favorite movie by A24, Midsummer. Anyway, they're pretty good with their horror movies,
Yeah, I haven't
in
seen,
my opinion.
I haven't seen too much by them, but I will most definitely dive deper into their catalog of movies.
You'll
well-
want to.
Midsummer, The Witch, X has Kid Cudi in it.
Yeah.
This one, they have a whole bunch.
I haven't seen X yet.
I haven't either. I want to, though. So do you have anything you want to say before we get into...
Before we dive down deep yonder.
Well, yeah, I mean, this movie isn't necessarily a more horror directed movie. It's like sound horror, if you know what I mean. Like the sounds and the soundtrack of this movie get you the most scared, and it really puts like butterflies in your stomach. It's not necessarily something that would, I don't know, jump scare you,
Yeah.
but it's a pretty good movie.
Well, most of the actors say it's more of a family drama rather than a horror movie. Because, I mean, there's a lot of family problems going on. And there's not, like, a huge presence of ghosts or
Yeah.
poltergeists or anything like that. There's not, like, a constant presence. It's just supposed to make you feel uncomfortable while the family's fighting each other, basically.
Yeah.
Pretty much. So, do you have anything you want to say?
First time I watched this movie, I had to pause it halfway through. I was just really freaked out. But that's a good thing, you know?
Yeah,
It's
for
doing its
sure.
job. But I really like this movie. I think I've only seen it like a handful of times, but when I do watch it, I get pretty invested.
Oh yeah. You kind of have to sit and watch the whole movie.
Yeah.
You can't really stop and go do something and
Yeah.
like, oh, I'll watch it tomorrow.
Yeah.
No, like you have to watch the
You have
whole
to sit
movie.
there and watch it.
yeah, like it takes your attention and it
Yeah.
like locks it in.
I also like the amount of foreshadowing in this movie. Like,
Oh,
there's
yeah.
multiple occurrences
Yeah.
where it foreshadows what will happen.
It's like, hey, you don't know what this is about yet, but you're
You
gonna.
will.
Yep.
Okay, so let's dive in here. I like the opening about the mom's death, and it has that little, snippet. It's like, oh, it was like her obituary or whatever.
Yeah.
I really like that. They added that in there. It didn't just throw us in, oh, mom's dead.
Yeah.
And
It was just like, here's her
There you
obit.
go.
the attention to detail with the dollhouse in the beginning, like how the mom made the dollhouses and everything.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, yeah.
That was my next. Okay, that was 2 down. The next one was the shot of the treehouse through the window.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
I really liked the way that they filmed that because it was like almost like Charlie was like looking out. Later in the movie, we find out that she wasn't Charlie the whole
Yeah.
time, but it was like seeing from like Charlie's eyes out to the treehouse and how the person that ends up possessing her is like trapped in her body
Yeah.
and stuff.
Yeah.
And then the transition from Dollhouse to Real House.
Yeah.
That was so cool.
Yeah,
The-
that was pretty cool.
The director had a big, thing. He was very adamant about the miniatures that were made for this movie, the mini house, the mini people, stuff like that. And it was just such a cool part to this movie where it was like perfectly aligned to where he just walked straight in from the miniature house. It almost
Yeah.
looked like it was, in the miniature house,
Uh-huh.
pretty much. I really like the way that they did that. And then it's very clear that Annie, the mom of the kids, had a very tough and hard relationship with their mom.
Yeah.
They made it very evident right away.
Mhm.
It was because she was saying, "Oh, I don't think that she'd like it very much with me talking about her, stuff like that," and how she was very secretive and private and stuff like that. So it was very obvious that she was like, she didn't hate her mom, but she also didn't get along with
Yeah,
her mom.
she wasn't a huge fan.
Right.
I think same with the rest of the family because later after like the funeral scene is over and like Charlie draws the dead grandma in her notebook because she's freaking weird. The dad walks into Peter's room and Peter's just chilling there playing his guitar and he's not disturbed or sad about anything that's
Yeah.
happened. Like
Yeah.
he
He's
doesn't.
clearly not bothered.
Yeah,
Yeah.
nothing changed for him.
And like he said, "How you feeling? You sad?" And he's like, "Yes, but no."
No.
He's like,
Yeah.
"No, I get it. I understand."
Yeah.
So it's a very understanding thing with that family that their grandmother wasn't like the
A big-
greatest person.
Yeah.
They weren't. She wasn't necessarily a big figure in their life.
Right. Well, I mean, they lived with her, or she lived with them rather. But like, it was very clear that she didn't have like a meaningful
Part
part
at
in their
all
life.
in the
Yeah.
family.
And the scene with who's gonna take care of me with Charlie, mom's talking to Charlie.
Mhm.
I felt really bad for the mom in that part because like throughout the movie she talks about her mom and she wishes Charlie was a boy, blah blah blah, and all that other stuff. But I feel real bad because she was like, "Who's gonna take care of me?" Like her mom, wasn't there
Yeah,
or
it's-
Yeah.
something. Like she tried.
Mhm.
It's just the grandma like forced her to be like, "No, she's mine. What are you doing?"
Mhm.
Yeah,
I just thought that was kind of I felt bad for Annie.
Yeah, another thing about this movie is like they make you feel how some of the certain characters are feeling. They put you in that situation that like dives into your mind, making you like, what if this happened to me? What if is this
Yeah.
kind of like
Yeah.
my relationship?
Yeah.
It does a really good job at that.
Right. And then seeing the mom and the model, it's like seeing the mom, like the weird one. You know what I mean? She's like in the bed with the baby.
Yeah.
And it was like foreshadowed earlier. She goes, Grandma wouldn't even let me feed you. She had to feed you.
Yeah, that was weird.
So at that point, we just thought, baby bottle.
Yeah, not.
But no, the model shows that she was actually feeding her from her own tit.
Which doesn't make sense because she was like old.
I mean, I don't know
I don't think.
anatomy all that well, but
don't
I think
think
it's there
they-
forever.
I don't think it is.
No,
Hayden.
I don't know.
I mean, I don't know much about
You're not-
lactating.
you don't know
being
anything
a
about
mother,
it.
and I only
Won't
know
ever.
being a dog mom, but I don't think
But
you
I'm-
lactate for your life.
I don't. No, I don't. But I don't think it like goes away.
I
I
don't
think you
think-
just
I-
stop
I think-
making it.
When you're that age, because she was older, like
Yeah.
probably like 60, 70, you're not fucking lactating.
No. So it was kind of. It was obviously right away from
Very
from the
odd.
jump. It was a very odd thing.
Yeah.
Just like.
Mm.
And the way she said it too was like, see, my mom made me get like she needed to feed you. I mean, later we find out why.
Mhm.
But like it was just so weird in that moment. You're supposed to feel weird about the grandma already.
Yeah.
And it was just like, okay,
Okay.
this is
Confirmed.
weird. Why is this woman
Definitely
feed-
weird.
Yeah, definitely so weird.
I also want to bring up how Charlie doesn't look like anyone else in the family. Like
Not at all.
not at all. She looks kind of weird, which is like it's like an insult to the actor, even though I don't have anything against her.
Uh-huh.
But I think the actor fit her really well, and like the description of her character matched the character she was trying to play in
Oh, yeah.
the movie.
Yeah.
It was really good.
Because I mean, in real life, she definitely looks better,
Yeah.
But she has
but she has, you know, something.
she has whatever
I don't know what disease it is or
I don't know.
what
do you know the
configuration.
kid from Stranger Things, Dustin?
Yeah.
That he has?
Yeah.
Same thing.
Yeah.
They have the same thing.
I'm
No
just saying, like,
collarbones and
well, I mean, he's a cutie pie.
I don't know, I think she's pretty cute too. I follow her on
But, like,
TikTok.
I mean, like,
in the movie
in the movie, she's not too.
I still actually think she's kinda cute in the
Okay.
movie.
But in real life, she definitely looks better than in
Yeah.
the movie.
I think she was portrayed to look like that just for the movie.
Yeah, absolutely. The kids at school. So it shows that they don't have exactly like the greatest school life because they're sort of outcasts, but they have like their small friend group. Charlie is definitely like the weird
Major
one
outcast,
in
yeah.
school, and it's not technically fair because she does have have something wrong with her,
Yeah.
but like
Yeah.
it just shows that like no one truly talks to her. 'Cause you didn't see one time in school her talking to somebody
Yeah.
other than like a teacher or somebody.
And I think she was actually the only character that didn't have any friends in the movie, like out of the whole family.
Oh, had to
Uh-huh.
have been. Well, we didn't see Steve's friends, I guess, the dad,
Yeah.
but it's assumed that he has
Yeah.
some friends or something. And then I want to talk about her going to a movie, which
Oh,
is
yeah.
really the grief counseling.
Grief counseling.
I find it weird that she didn't just say that. That she was
mean-
like, "Hey, I'm gonna go to grief counseling."
She
Or
might be a little
she might be a little
embarrassed.
shy about it or embarrassed,
Yeah,
but
I'm-
like maybe they would want to go with you.
I don't
or-
know though.
Well,
I, feel
I mean,
like she
maybe
was
the-
very alone for a
yeah.
lot of it.
Yeah,
I think another part of that is, I think she might have been the only one that had a tad bit of care that her mom died. Everyone else
yeah.
didn't seem to be bothered.
yeah.
but she was also talking about her trauma of growing up too. That's the next part I wanted to talk about was the actual grief counseling. Like she's
Yeah.
talking about, you know, my brother killed himself. Find out later that that's not exactly true. Mom was very cold and distant, and
Dad had depression, starved himself to death.
yeah, like she was talking a lot about the trauma. So it seems like it was like a mixture of like her childhood coming into like her mom's death. Kind of like a freeing thing because she wasn't sad,
Yeah.
but she was.
Yeah.
Because she kind of looked like she freed herself from that kind of like prison, sort of. Kind of being her daughter kind of may have made her feel like prison.
Mm-hmm.
And then one of the foreshadowings that you said was the telephone pole. They focus
Oh,
right
yeah,
on the
yeah.
telephone pole. And watching it, say, the first time, you're just kind of like, that was weird. Why'd they just solely focus on that pole? Later, you find out very quickly why that pole was important
Yeah.
earlier. But
Yeah.
And what was it? In the beginning, I think we skipped this. The grandma had like this symbol necklace.
Yeah.
I don't know exactly what to call it. It kind of looked like a menorah, like for Hanukkah, but it wasn't necessarily that. I don't know what it was, but she had like this special symbol which recurs throughout the movie.
right.
Mhm.
Then there's the eating. They went to the party. Charlie didn't want to go. Mom kind of made her go.
I kind of hate that whole scenario.
Yeah.
That, like, obviously, they have a big age gap.
Yeah.
She didn't want to go.
She was
he didn't want to
13.
bring her.
He should have been 17 or 18.
Two different stages of life.
Exactly.
No reason should. I know he lied about the
The barbecue. I
the
mean,
barbecue, but
he didn't plan on drinking anyway.
technically,
He planned to smoke.
yeah,
Let's
he
just
was
say that.
smoking.
Yeah, but he didn't plan on like driving immediately after
Yeah.
anything. Like, so he would have been fine. But
Yeah.
But still, I don't think she had any business.
she definitely shouldn't
And
have told.
that was a lot of
And it-
responsibility for him anyway.
It
Yeah,
definitely.
to go to a party and have to
like,
worry about his
watch his
sister,
sister.
that needs help being
Yeah.
taken care of, for the most
She
part.
shouldn't have been
No.
there
And it
at
gets
all.
brought up later how the mom wanted her to go, not necessarily her. And it gets
Yeah.
brought up,
It's
and the
true.
mom gets furious.
I mean, it's true.
She
it's,
did. She
yeah,
made her go.
pretty much. But eating the chocolate cake. Now, I get it. Like, they had to be on top of her, you know, make sure she wasn't eating nuts and whatnot. But, like, you would think that she would know.
I mean, yeah.
You would think that, like, oh, there's something hard in the cake.
Or just ask before you eat it.
Yeah.
Or
if
ask,
you're that
yes.
allergic.
I mean, fair. He did say, go get some chocolate cake.
Yeah.
That's not necessarily his fault, I don't think, because she could have walked over, looked, and saw there were nuts in it.
Yeah.
Or as she was eating it, she could have, tasted a nut in the first
Yeah.
bite or something.
Yeah.
I mean, the whole cake is contaminated no matter what, but,
Yeah.
like, she was eating, like, the whole piece of cake
Yeah.
before she started to get her throat closed and stuff like that. And then there's the scene, he got up right away.
Mhm.
He didn't say, oh, just, go. He didn't try to make an excuse, like, go get a drink or
Yeah.
Yeah.
hey,
no.
go outside. Something like, he was like, what do you mean? And, like, he immediately got up and left. It
Uh-huh.
wasn't like,
No hesitation.
no hesitation. So it was a good it was good seeing, like, he actually did care about her.
Yeah.
Mhm.
He just didn't want her in the room while he was smoking weed.
Yeah.
To-
Understandably.
Which, yeah, understandably. But it was just like he got up.
Yeah.
He didn't mess around. He understands. He didn't have the EpiPen.
Yeah.
It
Which
was
he
just-
should have brought it.
Yeah, they should have brought it
If it's that.
I
if it's that serious.
I mean, if she does have a nut allergy and they're going to a party, I think it's kind of like a given that they should bring it. I
Yeah.
mean, like,
Just in case.
Yeah.
anywhere for that matter.
That's what
I
I'm
mean,
saying.
even
you
if
should
it
probably
was-
always have one on you. Just...
I mean, even if it was at the school, it was an actual barbecue. I mean, they're not going to accommodate for one person.
Yeah.
It's
Mhm.
not like they know every allergy of every kid.
Yeah.
And it's not like they knew that Charlie was coming.
Yeah, exactly.
So in either scenario, probably should have been brought with.
Uh-huh.
I mean, but earlier at the funeral, they did forget to bring the EpiPen to the funeral.
Yeah, they're not necessarily a responsible family, I don't think.
Not in that aspect.
A
I
bit
guess.
dysfunctional as well because, like,
You know what? It probably because the grandmother's gone. She probably took care of all that stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She
I-
was
Oh,
probably the
yeah,
one that carried around the
probably.
EpiPen and stuff like that, and
Yeah.
made sure that she wasn't eating nuts. It was probably the grandma, and they're still trying to figure it out, probably.
And there's a lot of family issues that go on even with before the grandma died because it seems like the kids specifically are antisocial with the parents.
Yeah.
Like very
Uh-huh.
antisocial.
Now I want to talk about they're in the car, they're driving. This is probably the second most scene. We'll get to the other scene. This is probably the second most scene that sticks in my head when I think of this movie.
Yeah.
There's two scenes specifically in this movie. This is the second one where he's rightfully scared, speeding down the road, understandably, like nothing up to this point was entirely wrong or I didn't get. He's scared. He's rushing her to the hospital. What he didn't count on was the deer in the middle of the road as Charlie had her head out the window
Uh-huh.
and smacks into the telephone pole. The telephone pole from earlier that was foreshadowed. That scene is rough.
That's rough.
I couldn't imagine being him.
Could you imagine if that was us?
I couldn't imagine sitting in the driver's seat and you
Yeah.
in that situation. I'd probably act exactly like him.
Yeah.
Just distraught,
Yeah.
unable to comprehend what was going on,
That's like
just completely terrified.
intense.
That was an intense scene. And it was like up until this point it wasn't necessarily intense yet.
No.
It was
Not
like
really.
0 to 100 in
Real
half
quick.
a second.
And I think that's what brings the beauty of the scene because it really made my stomach drop and I was just
I mean there's like the foreshadow, but you didn't understand.
Yeah.
And then that happens and it takes you like 10 minutes to understand. Like you're like Peter.
Yeah.
You're not
processing
thinking.
it.
You're processing. You're like, what just
That
happened?
and that guilt would be immense. That
And-
would be
Oh,
terrible.
yeah.
Not to mention like that whole ride home, he was not close to home.
Yeah.
He had to sit in that car thinking about what just happened for a very long time.
Yeah.
And then like the slow walk up to his bedroom, and then he sat awake until morning. That was at least like close to 8 hours of him just sitting there
Yeah.
waiting for
Them to
the
find
inevitable
out.
to happen.
Yeah.
And I mean, it was just, that's a lot to deal with.
And you can see the change in his face. Like, it's not necessarily like it's not a lot of change, but you can see the subtlety of like his mood whenever his mom walks out and like looks in the back seat of her car,
Right.
and screams.
And then there's the moment where he like quit, he was like looking in the rear view and he like got a glimpse of her coat
Mm-hmm.
and he looked away real quick. That's like such a accurate description of any. I've obviously never been in that situation, but I can just thinking in his mind, that's exactly what would happen. Like you would like want to look, but then you can't because then it would be real.
Oh, you couldn't.
You have to
couldn't look at
process
that.
this first, you know? So it was like, that was a really rough scene for everyone.
Yeah.
Acting, Peter,
Yeah.
us, the viewers, like for everyone, that's such a hard scene.
The first time I watched it, I was like,
Holy shit. Yeah.
wow. That just happened.
And then she's, you know, finds the body, starts screaming. There's the scene where she's on the floor and it like sees Peter right outside the door listening.
Yeah, he's just like standing there motionless, just like.
But there's the shot of her head.
Ugh.
Yeah, that was nasty.
That was
Her head got
gross.
screwed up. Her
It was
jaw was
covered.
broken. Her eyes were popping out. Her nose was definitely like ripped off
Yeah.
nearly. Then
Covered in flies.
ants. Those were
Oh,
ants.
those were
Ugh.
ants.
Ants just eating the crap out of her face. And obviously the ants become an important thing later,
Mm-hmm.
Uh-huh.
you know, with the trail and stuff. So that kind of is foreshadowing right there with the ants, but without being obvious about it.
Also, we skipped over how the grandmother's body was dug up from the cemetery.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
like he didn't want to tell her, you know. I mean, I get it. You know, didn't want to worry her. So that's understandable. But it was just who I mean, obviously we find out that it was the cult that did it, but like who just goes around digging bodies up? Other than like grave robbers to steal
Yeah.
the crap they were buried with, but still. And then there's the weird things start. And like, you know, they're hearing the clicking, you know,
yeah, like
and,
how Charlie does with Tony.
and there's just like weird presences in the house, and it's obviously geared towards Peter because he's the one that did it, clearly. And it's also, as we find out later, he's the new host that they want, so kind of makes sense. And there's his throat's closing. And they're all under the bleachers smoking, and his throat starts to close.
Uh-huh.
That's another weird thing that started to happen. It was just, why is it? He's never had reactions before.
Yeah.
Why is it all of a sudden starting now? And then she's just sitting in the car, in her car, and he pulls up on the bike and drops the bike and just stands there. He's like contemplating if he really wants to go in. He's like, I don't know if I can do it.
Mm-hmm.
I have all this guilt for killing my
Yeah.
sister, blah, blah, blah. And she's just sitting there watching him. It's like, that's weird.
And
I
immediately,
get it. She's mad at him. Might be upset with it. It's an accident. I get you don't just get over it, but like blaming one certain person for an accident like that,
Especially
especially your
your
son,
son, who already feels like complete shit over it.
he is distraught from that point forward, he is completely screwed.
Yeah.
The whole movie. He feels completely terrible. And that's why I understand when Steve got mad at her for making the model later, which we'll get to that too, obviously. And then there's the scene where Joan shows up. She's sitting outside
Oh, yeah.
and wants to leave, and Joan's like, here, take my number if you ever want to talk. I was like, and that's kind of what the group's for.
Yeah.
And it's obvious later why she was
Why
so
she did
adamant
it.
about doing
Yeah.
this,
Yeah.
but like, it was like, you're kind of weird just to come up to this lady. You don't have any reason to know her, or
She was very meticulous with how she was going to be manipulative.
Mhm.
She's like, my son died after what's her name, Annie, mentioned that her daughter was killed, and that's what really put Annie on the hook. Like,
and the thing is, my son and grandson died, right?
yeah,
Was this sacrifices? Were they sacrifices instead of just dying in a car wreck or something?
Yeah.
Do we find out later?
I didn't even think of that, but
I mean,
that could possibly be
son and grandson, sort of.
Yeah,
And then talking to Joan, they're sitting in the house, discussing this whole thing about, you know, what happened with her son and grandson, and then the paint thinner story. I feel so bad for Annie too in some points in this movie. Like she obviously is distraught about nearly killing her kids the first time. And like that's just such a rough story. Could
Then
you
again-
imagine sleepwalking and then waking up to you holding a match and like basically dumping gasoline on your
Yeah.
kids?
Then again, what if the grandma had something to do with
Do
that?
with that,
Yeah,
yeah,
that's
maybe.
what I was thinking
Because
too.
I don't think you just dump paint thinner, which is highly flammable, all over your children, grab a box of matches, and
Yeah.
Nah, that's not normal.
That's definitely not normal.
definitely something I do while I'm sleepwalking.
Yeah,
Oh, for sure. And now is the model of the accident. I understand, I get where Steve's coming from, where he's like, what would you do if Peter saw this? Like, you already know that he screwed up from the accident. It was an
Uh-huh.
accident, just let it go. I mean, it's not easy to let it go, I get it, but like,
Don't recreate it.
don't recreate it.
Yeah.
That's something that you're gonna end up having your son kill himself now.
Yeah.
Just by making a model of the accident. I get it. It's her way of coping. And I mean, it's her office area, so I would hope that he wouldn't just walk in there.
And check it
Yeah.
out.
At least for his
Yeah.
sake, I would hope. But that's not.
He's already been through so much.
I know.
Yeah, he does need to see that.
Next, I want to talk about the fight at the table. They're sitting at dinner,
Wow.
and they start yelling at each other. And that's where it comes up that Charlie didn't even want to go to this party.
Yeah.
Like, you made her go. It's not like I forced her to come with me or was like, hey, your friends are going to be there. No, like, I didn't want to take her. I just took her as a courtesy because I love my sister,
Yeah.
and you asked her to go with me. It's not like she absolutely wanted to go.
Not only that, she claims it was an accident, but then goes on to like subtly imply that it was his
fault. Like that, I don't know. I get it. Like I said before, she's upset. She lost her daughter. But like, you can't just sit there and blame Peter for it. I know you want to blame somebody, but it was an accident.
Yeah.
It's not like he purposely tried to whack her head off or anything. Like, he was driving to the hospital. That's why his speed was so high. And like, now we can think that maybe the cult had something to do with the deer in the middle of the road or something.
Yeah.
And did you want him to hit the deer? I mean, yes, he could have went left instead of right, but when you're in that situation,
Yeah,
you
you-
see a
you
deer in the
don't
middle of the
know.
road,
You're not
you just
thinking.
no, you're just doing whatever. I mean, who wants to drive into oncoming traffic anyway, even if no one's on the road?
Yeah, I think your safest bet would have
It would be
been
to
to
go
the
right. So she's blaming him basically for the wrong things, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And now the seance and the chalkboard.
Mm.
So it's kind of like a weird scene to see. They did it really well from
yeah.
a directing and special effects standpoint.
Uh-huh.
It was really cool to see like her hair move, the cup to slide across the table, the chalk writing itself, "I love you,
Mhm.
Grandma," or whatever.
Mhm.
Like, that was a very cool scene from a special effects standpoint.
Yeah.
But it was a very uncomfortable scene, seeing how uncomfortable Annie was in the situation. She's like, no, it's okay. This is my grandson. Like,
Okay.
okay.
I think that's also where you start to realize how Joan is up to something. Like,
well,
Up to
there's
no
that
good.
scene where she's like, I want to leave. And she goes, what? Like,
Let her
you-
leave.
Let her leave. Like, why are you acting?
Go.
It was
Yeah.
obvious that
So yeah, she was.
this was for
Yes.
the
and she's
cult,
like
but
telling her to stay. She's like, no, it's okay. I've done
she's
this.
obviously gaslighting and manipulating her.
Yeah.
And now, there's one thing I did have a question about, but thinking a little more into the theory kind of makes a little bit more sense, was Joan said that for the seance, the whole family has to be there. So how does she do the seance without her son and grandson?
And any other member of her family. Because
Or with any... Exactly. So there's two theories. One was that was the only son and grandson she had. So
So she doesn't.
she
have
doesn't
to.
need them.
Yeah.
also, Peter is the new vessel for the king of hell that they're trying to bring back.
Paimon, yeah.
So maybe she said the whole family has to be there so that Peter will be there instead of just saying, oh, your son Peter has to be with you.
And
Yeah.
that's why she tried to get Peter, maybe Charlie inside Peter's body instead of Annie's, which comes later in the movie.
Well, King Paimon can only go into a male's body.
But
That's why I was saying about the son and grandson. Maybe they were sacrifices. King Paimon didn't, their bodies couldn't handle him.
Yeah.
So maybe they were sacrifices.
Yeah.
And this is also another manipulation by Jones saying your whole family has to be there so that there's a way of saying, without saying, Peter has to be there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So get your husband and your son because the whole family has to be there.
That's probably the most plausible theory.
Right. Okay, so then there's the mom and everyone starts hearing Charlie's clicking.
Uh-huh.
While they're driving. There's the scene where she's sitting at the light and then all of a sudden there was the click and she starts like crying and stuff. I couldn't imagine you hearing the thing.
Mass hysteria.
It could have been, the depression making her hear things because she misses her daughter, but it's also one thing, like if you're just hearing random, stuff, like you just hear your daughter's clicking while you're driving.
Yeah.
It's a weird, because if anybody else was with you, they'd think it's weird.
If
But
they
you,
heard it.
by yourself, you're just like, oh, maybe
Okay.
I'm just depressed. I miss my daughter.
Yeah.
So it was like another manipulation in a way, saying like, oh, you miss your daughter, you think, but we're actually trying to drive
Guess
you insane.
what?
And then there's the ants on the bed. She wakes up to all the bed just covered in ants, and there's the trail the whole way down to Peter's room. And it's just, imagine seeing like your son's face covered in ants like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would have the same reaction as she did, where she was standing there like horrified.
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't imagine seeing something like that.
And then like she snaps and she's awake, but not necessarily awake, and she accidentally blurts out to Peter in her
I never wanted to
dream
be your
sequence,
mother.
Yeah, I never wanted to be your mother. And
Could you imagine?
it would be terrible. And he starts crying, and then he bursts into flames. More foreshadowing, and more. I can't tell if it's foreshadowing or a past reference.
it seems like it's more of a reference, seeing how she told the paint thinner story
Yeah,
from earlier,
Uh-huh.
and like her nightmare is like making that actually happen,
and
like
he,
playing on her guilt in a way.
and he like starts crying. He's like, and then like she actually wakes up.
Like that's just, I don't know, that's awful
Yeah,
to see in your dreams like that.
that's probably one of the worst nightmares. I mean, not necessarily, but that's a pretty bad nightmare to have.
Yeah.
And then there's her starting her own seance. It's probably a bad idea to start this in the first place. Yeah, just seeing it from this point of view, it's kind of probably a bad idea. But she doesn't understand from that moment that, hey, this isn't a good thing,
Yeah.
Obviously, hindsight's 20/20.
Mm-hmm.
And then I thought it was funny. She wakes up, Peter and Steve, they come down for the seance and everything. And he looks at the note. He's like, it's so funny the way he says it. It's like, what language is even that? It's just the way he said it. It makes me laugh anytime. And that's like the only time in this movie that I actually laugh.
Yeah.
Because it's a very good movie. I love this movie. But it was just like so funny. It was just, what
Yeah.
language even is that?
Yeah.
Or is even that? It is. What language is even that? It's just so funny. And then there's the moment they did the seance and you can see her get possessed.
Yeah.
Like her facial
Uh-huh.
change right before she has like that growling noise or whatever. But like she visibly changes right in front of everyone and in front of the viewer's face.
And her voice changes as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She changes to like Charlie's voice.
Which is
weird.
insane. Could
Crazy.
you imagine?
I know. And then there's Peter in school. So this scene, obviously everyone knows the scene that has seen it, but like
Yeah.
this scene is rough too because he's sitting in school and he just starts seeing that blue light, the Charlie's blue light thing. And he looks in the reflection and his reflection's smiling back at him,
That's
which is step
so
number one of
freaky.
weird shit that's happening. And then it's the scene where he smacks his face on the table. So it's obvious that Charlie was making him do this because he started clicking himself. And, you know, the hand shooting a three-pointer.
Uh-huh.
And then
It's like Vecna.
That's so funny. That
it kind of looks like
Yeah.
it just... And he smacks his face off the table. That's such a hard scene to watch because he's almost being beaten
Yeah.
off the desk like several times because he does the weird face thing and then all of a sudden he gets the side of his head smashed onto the table and then back up and he breaks his nose right on the
Yeah.
table
in front of everybody.
in front of everyone.
That,
He just
A,
starts
that's embarrassing. B,
True.
imagine the other students.
I couldn't even.
Imagine seeing that in school. I'd shit my pants.
You probably would, but that's such a rough scene to watch because you gotta just think of it like from Peter's point of view. That's rough.
Sad.
And there's the Charlie drawing at the same time that this is all happening. She's drawing on the notebook and it's just flipping page by page by page, just drawing Peter's face over and over and over and over
Yeah.
again. That's from the mom's point of view, that's gotta be rough too.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And that's what actually leads her to try and get rid of the book.
Yeah, exactly. And that's trying to burn the book now. She's sitting there and throws the book in there. And her arm just catches on fire.
That's insane.
Like wild. And just to think that like you're burning this thing that is technically possessed and causing these things to happen, and all of a sudden you're on fire.
Yeah.
And obviously she gets it out and puts the fire out and she's not burning anymore. Then Peter's back at school and Joan is like yelling at him from across the street.
Yeah.
Like that was such a weird
That
scene.
was
It was
weird,
obviously
too.
another
You will be expelled.
it's obviously another cult
Uh-huh.
I don't know the word, but it's obviously the cult talking to him, but like he's never seen Joan. We don't know where Joan went or anything. Like it's just so weird to see that from a schoolyard.
Annie tries to go back and to her apartment, but it's locked, and then it
Yeah,
goes like
exactly.
a
We don't
second
know.
shot.
We don't know what happened to her.
Yeah, and there's like
just saw the
a
strands.
triangle carved into the table with Peter's eyes cut out of the picture.
And the Peter hits his face, and then there's the body in the attic. So this whole movie, we were wondering where the body went. We didn't know that if someone took it, someone did whatever, or the body was possessed and it got out itself, or what. We had no idea what was going on, and all of a sudden it's sitting up there in the attic, buzzing away with flies, disgusting. And there's the symbol, written, or the phrase written above it about for the cult.
I actually, what was it? Once Steve gets home, how does the mom know that the body's been dug up? Because like he mentions it to her like, this is why I didn't want to tell you, and then she like starts freaking out and didn't like ask, wait, you knew that my mom's body was dug up? Like,
To be honest with you, in that situation, if I'm in that situation, that's probably the least important thing.
Yeah.
It's like that he didn't
Yeah.
tell her. It's just I
Yeah.
just found my mom's headless body in the attic, and there's
Like, what
flies
do you
all
do?
over.
What do you do?
I don't know. I don't want to be put in that
No,
situation.
don't get me in that situation.
And then
Mom, don't do it.
she throws the notebook in the fire, like for real. Puts
she
the-
dumps gasoline on it. She wants Steve to throw it in.
and
That was intense.
that was intense. His whole body just catches on
Yep.
fire, and it's just like, who saw that coming?
Oh my
Tell
god,
me
that
one
was
person
insane.
that knew that part was coming.
No one.
Because when she grabbed the book out of his hand and threw it in, you would think that she'd be catching on fire.
Yeah.
But nope, it was him. And just, I wonder why it picked him and throwing it in, actually throwing
Maybe
it in.
as punishment. 'Cause
Maybe.
they didn't, or whatever spirit or whatever didn't want her dead just yet.
Or
Now-
like rules weren't being followed or something.
Now we're
Yeah.
getting to the start of the scene that sticks in my mind every time I talk about this movie. It's Annie on the wall
Yes.
behind her. It's not the scene that sticks in my head, but this is the start of it.
Yeah.
Annie's on the wall behind Peter, and she crawls
Uh-huh.
across the wall when he tries
And
to
then
look.
she like floats away.
Yeah, like that
That was very unsettling.
was so unsettling. Thank you. I couldn't.
It's
I was trying to
so
formulate
Do
a
we know
sentence.
who's like, was Charlie in her body? Do you think?
Well, we'll get to that after the last one because
Okay.
it really explains it after the ending. And then there's the scene where Peter's down and looking at his father's burnt body, right? And then she's like hiding in the corner and up on the ceiling, and then there's the naked guy in the doorway. The scene, it probably scares everyone their first time, but it scared the crap out of me where Annie's in a different corner of the house, and then all of a sudden she starts chasing him just out of
Yeah.
nowhere, and he just runs away. You
gets
know?
up in the attic and
Yeah, like
he's like yelling. He's like, "Mom, stop!" And then it cuts to a shot that you totally were not expecting. And she's
No.
like slamming her head off the attic
Yeah.
door.
That's also very unsettling.
that is just so unsettling, and watching her bang her head off the ceiling of the door is just, everyone who watched that for the first time is just like, what the fuck is going on?
Yeah.
You have to think that in your head. There's no other way to think about this movie other than that.
And then once she stops banging her head off of it, he turns around and then sees a ritual of him where the grandma's dead body
Exactly.
used to be. And that would be so freaky to witness in real life. Like you seeing your picture on a ritual,
With the eyes stabbed out.
yeah, most likely a satanic ritual, and you're just going crazy.
And now is finally the scene that I keep talking about. That every time I tell someone to watch this movie, because I really like the movie, I'm like, you have to watch it. There's this one scene that really screws with me every time I see it. And it's the scene where the mom comes to the attic and she's just sitting there sawing her own head off with the emergency saw, the wire that's supposed to cut down trees.
Yeah.
And she's just sitting there sawing her own head off, and you can hear it like squelching and stuff as she's going
so
through muscle.
nasty.
And then she hits the bone and she gets really fast, and you can just hear it like sawing through the spine.
Yeah.
It's just like the noises and the sound that's coming from this, and like just
Disgusting.
watching it, and then all of a sudden you just hear
Yeah,
the thud of her head.
Peter jumps out the window and then like
Yeah,
he's
and-
laying down in the garden and then there's like
Like, it's just the noise in that scene always makes me so uncomfortable. Exactly.
Literally.
Every time. And it's just that scene always sticks in my head every single time.
That's
I
a
tell
rough
someone.
one.
That's always the first scene that comes to my mind. Obviously, that's a good thing because, you know, that makes people talk about it.
Yeah,
And want,
they're doing their job.
they're doing their job. But man, does that scene never leave my head ever.
and then
And then finally, you know,
He-
a little bit of an uncomfortable ending where, you know, the mom's body is floating up into the
Mhm.
treehouse, and this is where Charlie actually takes over his body.
Yeah.
I think that Peter died from falling out of the
oh
window.
yeah, Peter's dead.
I think he actually died there.
Okay.
And then Charlie takes over the body before he truly disappears. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like before he actually has the final death, I guess you could say. Is that she takes over the body, walks him up in there, and there's just all these naked cultists standing around.
Yeah.
Two headless bodies on the floor of Mom and Grandma.
Yeah.
Charlie's
And
head on a
Charlie's
mannequin.
decapitated head on top of like this toy robot looking thing that
Yeah.
looks like Charlie made. And like that's so unsettling and uncomfortable. But it also explains how Charlie was Payman the whole time.
Yeah.
Because Joan says, King Payman, we have corrected your not great body. Like Charlie was
Yeah.
not an ideal body for
Just like Payman needed a
Payman.
male host.
exactly, and now has Peter. And it's kind of like a left open, like an open-ended
Yeah.
ending.
And they're all saying like, "Hail Payman, hail!" It ends on an unsettling note.
And it's
Oh,
like,
yeah.
what happens next? Does Payman take over the world? Does Payman first want to let all the other kings of hell out? Like, what it just leaves you open to a
I-
whole bunch of different endings,
I
really.
know. I want to know what happens because there's so many different things that could have happened.
They literally could go
He
anywhere.
could,
from there.
like the movie could have just cut and then like Peter gets shot in the head and dies. And,
Some
like,
Yeah.
it could be anything.
yeah.
Did you
Well-
notice when they were when Peter was on his way to the treehouse that there were a bunch of like naked people in the woods?
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Well,
Ew,
there's
could you imagine?
actually I want to save it for a fear fact. I'll talk about it in a minute.
Okay.
But sis, what do you want to talk about? And then we'll let him bring up his stuff.
I just think it's a good one to watch every once in a while, or like, I think everyone should watch this movie at least once. You know, it's really good. Has some really intense scenes though,
Yes.
and it's just a good movie.
It really
It's
is.
honestly probably one of the like most unsettling movies I've ever watched.
For sure.
And the head sawing part is not even the one that sticks in my brain the most. It's
Really?
the decapitation. Of,
Oh, really? Yeah,
Yeah.
that's why I said that was the second one.
that's
For me,
the
it's,
one when
it's
I
the noise.
when I think of that movie. That's the scene I think of when
the
he,
decapitation, yeah. So you have stuff you want to talk about, right?
Yeah. I mean, this is a movie for everyone. I mean, like even if you're not a horror movie fan, which if you're not a horror movie fan, why are you here? But like, it's not
What are you
necessarily a scary movie. It's an intense movie. It's like a mind fucker. But yeah, it's a really really good movie. I mean, like, I don't understand why the cultists were all nude and then there were like some like not naked people there. Like
Well, they were more so just covered with a sheet, really.
yeah, but
But it's kind of like a cultist thing to kind of be naked for some reason.
Yeah.
I don't understand the
I don't
cultist
either.
point
I
of
don't
view of
either.
it. Like, I'm
I
not
guess
in a
it's
cult.
more like
I don't know.
natural.
I guess so. Yeah, that
You know
makes
what I
sense.
mean? Or like no one's wearing clothes, so like we're all comfortable. We're all.
I guess, yeah. So
I
that
don't know.
makes
It's not
sense
like I'm
little
in a
bit.
cult.
there was another question I had. I didn't know what you guys would think of it. Like, if Payman could only have a male host body, then what was Payman doing if Charlie was actually Payman and then Charlie entered her mom's body? So that's two girls and then Payman in the body, and then it enters a freaking.
I think that he can possess anybody, but he has to have, in order to live and have his power, he has to have one certain male host.
Okay.
One strong male host, which is another reason I thought maybe Joan sacrificed her son and grandson to try and find that, that
Payman.
perfect host
Yeah.
to Payman, but the son and grandson died because they couldn't handle Payman.
Yeah.
And then Charlie was born as Payman, so he possessed the body of a girl and the mom, and neither of them could handle him. So
Another thing I wanted to bring up is like it's never explained why Annie's mom was a Satanist. Like,
yeah,
it's all up to speculation, but I don't know.
Well, with that, do you have anything else you want to say, or do we want to continue on?
It's just a really good movie, but
Yeah,
you can
it really
continue
is.
on with that.
Okay, so I have some fear facts, and I don't know if you guys knew all these or not, but so that scene where Peter's smashing his face off of, I knew this before the podcast, but there was a very long description about it, so I just took a picture of it. In an interview, Alex Wolff explains that he wanted to actually break his nose for the scene where his character slams his head into a desk. Director Ari Aster respectfully declined that offer and told Wolff they'd give him a soft, cushioned desk for the scene. When it was time for the scene to be shot, Wolff slams his head into the desk only to discover that the top was foam and the bottom was hard. He dislocated his jaw, which is a previous injury the actor has had, for the scene. So really, well, he wanted to actually break his nose for the scene, which is just straight up commitment, number one. And number two, he he dislocated his jaw, so he kind of got what he wanted. You know,
Yeah.
he wanted to actually make this look real, and in a way,
He
it
did.
did.
It convinced me, man.
He did.
And for my next one, the mom didn't want to do horror movies anymore. And the only reason she did Krampus and the other one, I forget the name of it, was she saw them as like black comedies rather than just straight up horror.
Yeah.
So she said that she didn't want to do dark movies anymore. However, she read the script for this movie and loved it so much that she couldn't refuse. Which I'm so glad that she did it, because she was excellent in this
Yeah.
movie. And it's her scene that sticks in my head.
Yeah.
The scene that with the sawing of her head, like that scene there, from the moment, you know, she gets possessed till the end, is because of her. You know, climbing across the wall and, you know, running after Peter just straight up the stairs and stuff. Like,
Yeah.
it's because of her that this movie sticks in my mind, and especially those scenes. The director asked the kids, so I think her name was Millie and his name is Alex. He asked them to go to dinner together, but in character, but as Charlie and Peter.
Yeah.
So they sat for 3 hours in silence of Peter trying to get Charlie to talk. So they were in character at dinner, and they sat there for 3 hours with Alex as Peter trying to get Charlie to talk to him. And she hardly talks in the movie,
Yeah.
really, or has trouble talking too. The director wanted scares that were emotionally justified rather than jump scares. There's maybe 1 or 2 jump scares in the movie, but like he wanted like emotional scaring rather than just trying to scare you for the sake of being scared.
And he did a pretty good job.
He did very good rather than just trying to scare you. The film was shot in 32 days, which once again did a pretty damn good job for such a short filming process. We've done a couple movies on this podcast where it was like 20 days, 24
Yeah.
days, 32 days. Like, it's such a well shot, directed movie that they were able to do this. And they had great actors.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That they didn't need days upon days of reshoots and stuff. This movie is included in the 1001 movies you must see before you die. Well deserved to be on there.
Absolutely. What
There's-
number was it? Did
It didn't say,
Oh, okay.
but it's on the list. But there's many, many more movies than 1001 on this earth. And
sure.
for it to be on the list says a ton about the movie.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
The cult symbol was on the telephone pole from the foreshadowing earlier in the movie. So it's kind of like watch it again and you'll see it thing.
Uh-huh.
The symbol was on the telephone pole when they foreshadowed it. Kind of like, it kind of seems like the cult was involved with it, but wasn't.
Yeah.
Because they didn't cause it to happen, but they knew it was going to happen that way. Because
Yeah.
it was, you know, foretold that way. And then for my final one, there was a shift, a day to nighttime shift in the movie, where it was like 1 second it was day and the next second it was nighttime,
Uh-huh.
if you remember.
I think that was the scene after the dad got burned to a crisp.
I think you might be right. It was either that or when Peter got home. No, I think you might. I forget when the scene was. Either way, when it shifts to nighttime, there's a bunch of naked cultists standing around the house.
Nasty. And then the one inside, like the first one you see, he has like that creepy smile. He looks like an ice cream man. Like he has a little
Yeah.
Charlie Brown curl on his head.
But earlier
So
in the
creepy.
movie, you can see all the cultists standing around the house at night, which is kind of weird.
That's so.
Yeah, it's
So, what do you rate this movie, X?
honestly,
Out of 10.
I'd give it a 9.
Yeah,
Okay.
I was gonna give it a 9.
I give it a 9 as well. I really, really, really enjoy this movie a lot.
Uh-huh.
It doesn't like waste too much time explaining in excruciating detail what's going on.
Uh-huh.
It's just like infers it, and you kind of have to guess a little bit.
Yeah.
But it also gives you like context to it. And I feel like most of these shots, the foreshadowing was very well done. The, imagery of like, the tree house through the window, and it's just the way that the scenes happened. They happened organically. It wasn't forced or anything like that. It was just really, really well written and directed, I think. And
Yeah.
the actors were amazing. All of them. Well, yeah, there were background actors, but I mean, like, all four of the family were fantastic. She even did a great job, being like this antisocial kind of
Yeah.
messed up little
She didn't have
weird girl.
much.
Even though she's
Yeah.
not weird, but what are your opinions? What did you like about the movie or disliked about the movie?
I thought the last 10, 15 minutes were pretty weird, and I think some of it was unnecessary. I think they could have done a better job with like how everything unfolded. I did like how the explanation that Payman was Charlie was done.
Yeah.
But I just found the last couple minutes to be really weird, and it could have been explained better, which is probably the only reason I'd give it a 9, is just for like the last 10 minutes or so.
Yeah, the last 10 minutes were, I kind of just sat
Rough.
there with
I
my
mean,
eyes wide open, and I was like,
5 minutes of those 10 minutes is rough to watch.
Yeah.
The head cutting scene and,
Yeah.
and like Peter jumping out the window and stuff
Uh-huh.
like that, like that's really rough to see.
Even when she's banging her head against the.
Oh yeah.
Oh, I
Oh, yeah,
hate
that was
that
weird.
scene.
But yes, it's an unsettling, uncomfortable ending right there. The last 5 minutes of
Yeah.
them going up into the treehouse and stuff like that. It's
Absolutely.
very uncomfortable, unsettling to see that. So I get where you're coming with that.
But I really liked it, and I liked it. It got the job done. Like,
Oh, for sure. I definitely think about this movie when people think like when people talk about horror movies and like
Yeah.
their favorite ones.
I'm like, you gotta watch
this
this.
is high on the list.
Yeah, honestly, it has a lot of replay value to it. I think I could watch
yeah.
it like
I
could
10
watch it-
more times
yeah.
and be like, man, this is a pretty good
And
movie.
you can watch it like say 10 times and you could still pick up little things.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Find new
there's a lot of
things.
little details.
Like it's not the very first time you watch it you know every single thing about
Yeah.
the movie. Like I was picking up stuff and that's probably the 4th time I've seen it.
Yeah, it's really one of those movies you have to figure
Watch more
out.
than once. But
Yeah.
everyone should absolutely see this movie.
I agree.
So do you have anything else you want to say?
Watch this movie.
Watch it.
All right, so I couldn't find any quizzes in this movie, so sorry, the first guest
Dang.
doesn't get a quiz.
Man.
Should have made one.
Should have made one. But we'll as a gift or whatever for coming on and being our guest, we're going to let you pick another movie.
Okay.
It'll be I forget the date, but it won't be for a little bit. We have
Mhm.
the rest of April lined up, but the very first movie we do in March or May, I mean. The very first movie in May, which one should it be?
I really hate to do this to you guys, but I think it should be Tusk.
We knew that was coming. And we knew it was eventually going to have to be done.
We've talked about Tusk before.
Oh, this is going to be awful.
I'm
not ready
paying
for this.
that. Rubber
No.
was a million times better than Tusk.
Way better.
Tusk is rough.
It's an all. I can't. All right. I mean, we're
We'll have
going
to
to do
mentally
it.
prepare for that one.
Yes. I'm not paying for it either. I'm finding somewhere that has it free.
That is not a movie I will.
Pirate the movie.
And
Like,
and
literally.
whatever streaming service has this movie and it's free,
What
I'm
are-
going to question
What
their
are you
leadership.
doing?
Why this movie? Anyway, all right.
I'll buy it
we'll
on
get
DVD
into-
for you guys.
Thanks.
Thanks. And now
Appreciate it.
you'll be able to read next week's question, which is the bottom
Okay.
one there.
Next week's question is, what state does the film and comic book ministry's 30 Days of Night take place?
Perfect. Now, do not be Googling that. I knew that answer. I don't know why I looked.
Did you?
But yeah.
Can I see it?
Yeah, don't say it.
Nice.
And we're going to do... What movie are we doing next week? Oh, yeah, we're doing The Strangers next week. So,
Based on a true story.
yeah, it is. So,
Makes it even scarier.
exactly. That's another rough movie that we're going to get
There's
into.
a lot of information about the real story. Like,
Yeah.
there's a lot of true crime podcasts and documentaries that
Oh,
talk
cool.
about the real story. So I learned about, like, the real story of that first. And then I heard about the movie, and I was like, oh, God.
Okay, well, maybe next week you can delve into
Yeah.
the real story.
It's pretty interesting.
Cool.
Pretty unsettling.
Well, any last remarks from you two?
Watch this movie, guys.
Yep, absolutely.
But don't watch it alone. And if you're really skittish, don't watch it at night. Maybe like evening, maybe like early evening before the sun goes away.
I challenge you to watch it in your room alone on your bed with one leg, like
Dangling off.
dangling off. Just have,
Not
like,
under the covers.
not under the covers. Yeah. And
If you do that,
keep your door closed. Keep
props.
all the lights off. Just have the TV on.
No,
Yeah.
No,
don't do
open
it.
your doors.
If you
Open
can-
your doors. That makes
That's
it
worse.
worse.
Oh, well, yeah. Shut all the lights off in your house.
Open the doors.
Open up your door just a little bit.
Just
and,
enough that
Just a
you'll see
hair.
a shape outside of it.
and watch this. And if you do that, congratulations. You're like the
Congrats.
bravest person I know.
I will never do that.
Well, if that's all you guys have, we'll catch you next week with The Strangers.
Catch you later.
See ya.